What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Your time is very much valued. Thank you very much for sharing your time with me today. Today, we welcome along a fantastic actor by the name of Tom Kelsey. Did I say that right, Tom?
Yep.
Brilliant. Tom trained at RADA and has credits in films such as My Bloody Galentine, other things such as the web series Clusterf, the short films Number 11 and Digging, and various animations including Kill Claws and By Grit Alone, the video game, which I'm sure some of you may have come across, as well as appearances in adverts such as the Anthony Nolan stem cell donors advert and the Bry You're All Right music video. And for stage, he has appeared in the Monologue Slam finals at the Theatre Royal Stratford East, a one-man show penned by Tom himself called Tiger, which was on at the RADA Festival. The Shark is Broken, understudied to Richard Dreyfuss, the character of Richard Dreyfuss, both at the Ambassadors Theatre in London and the Royal Alexandra Theatre in Toronto. And most recently, A Little Life, understudied to Jude and Willem, played by James Norton and Luke Thompson, at the Pinter, Savoy in London, directed, of course, by the fantastic Ivo van Hove. And that's just a small sample of Tom's CV. It's an honor to have you today, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm all good. The sun was coming out a bit. I don't know if it's just teasing us that spring is here. Seems to be. Yeah, but in a good mood.
Yeah, it's been teasing us the last few days, but hopefully it's here to stay now. Well,
yeah, the amount of times I've sort of gone to retire my winter jacket and then the next week been like, I guess not.
Yeah, I went for a walk yesterday and just had my jacket on. I had to take it off. I thought, great. And then I got towards the end, I have to put it back on. And it's just like, it's teasing us in this country. The weather never.
It is. You can't trust it. You can't trust it.
Never. So we start at the beginning. To begin at the beginning, as Dylan Thomas says. Where did it all start for you, Tom? The love of acting. Where did it come from?
I don't really know. I think it's just always been there. But I didn't immediately go down that career path. Like I did it for A levels, kind of as I did like maths and economics, and then the agreement was like, if I do those, I can pick one that I enjoy. So I picked theatre purely as something that I enjoy, never with any intention of like being an actor. And then I went down like the business path, and I was doing a business degree, and I was out in Massachusetts doing that. And at American universities, they let you take like random classes while you're there. They're called electives. And I thought, I'll take a theatre class, like with the same mentality of like, I like theatre, that was fun. And literally the first class, I was like, oh shit, I've picked the wrong degree. So I did like a complete 180, much to my parents' bemusement, I'm sure. And I finished with like half theatre, half business. And then I was kind of leading this double life. I was working for HarperCollins publishers by day, and then trying to do theatre and shows and classes by night. And then it kind of got to the point where I was like, I need to pick one, and abandon the job security for the thing that I feel would be a life well spent. So I fully went into theatre, and I came back to London and went to drama school and trained. And it's kind of been theatre ever since, yeah. So I think it was always there. And I do think it's one of those things, like once the bug bites, it doesn't really let go,
It's always there. As soon as it gets in, it's with you for life, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It never leaves you. So you went to RADA.
I did. Yeah. I did their MA Theatre Lab course because I'd already done like 4 years of a BA. So I felt like, God, I can't do another 3 years as a student, like be this perpetual student. I'll be in so much debt. So I did their MA Theatre Lab course, which was like a 1 year, September to September, no breaks type thing.
Yeah, I was looking at that course actually at one point. I never auditioned for it, but what was it like?
It was great, man. It was really, really, really full on. The focus was more on like physical theatre and the ensemble. And really they were trying to equip you with the tools to create work, like to make your own work, form a theatre company, be a part of an ensemble. But it was... both emotionally and physically very, very, very draining and fulfilling. It's one of those things when you think back to drama school. I mean, the best thing about it was just like you're getting to do it every day, which is not the case afterwards. Obviously, like I still take classes so that I keep that machine like well oiled. But the best thing about drama school was like this thing that I love, I get to do it all the time at the moment. And you realize once you graduate, that's not how it is. You know, there could be months and months, maybe even years of like someone not giving you, that's the thing, someone not giving you the chance to get to do it. So for that reason, I absolutely loved it because it just felt like kind of being in like a monastery or something, like just a place where I would go and do this thing that I absolutely love and dedicate all my time to that. And I kind of done my BA by then, and I was coming to it. I think I was 24, so I didn't really, I was really just focused on the work. And I got a lot of joy out of that. But it was tough, man. Like on our course, every single term, someone would drop out. I think we started with 16 and finished with 13.
Oh, wow.
They really sort of pushed us quite hard. And I think a lot of those teachers are maybe not at the school anymore. I think a lot of drama schools did like a clearing out of the old guard. So I feel quite fortunate in a way to have had some of those teachers who were really quite hardcore. It was sort of like, I don't care about your feelings, I want to make you better at acting, which obviously doesn't vibe with everyone, but for me, I quite liked that sort of whiplash mentality. So I feel fortunate for that, and to have left with the tools to kind of make my own work. That's a huge gift, as we were talking about briefly before we started. The ability to create your own work is a real boon, alongside like working with an agent and doing the classical auditioning thing.
Yeah, because that's a good lead on to your one-man show, Tiger, which I know you started at RADA, and then, as I said in the intro, is on at the festival. And I think you did it at the Camden Festival as well, didn't you?
I did it initially at Bloomsbury Festival.
Okay.
Then I did it at RADA Festival. Sorry, my cat has invaded the call.
That's okay.
She's got like a sixth sense for a Zoom call. So there she is. That's Snug the joiner. A nice
Snug.
Shakespearean cat to join us. I did it at RADA Fest. And then I believe we sort of went into COVID after that.
Yeah.
And it kind of got laid to rest for a while. I had planned on taking it to Edinburgh Festival. And then, we got hit by the whirlwind of COVID. And it's only as of sort of recently, within the last year, that I've really started digging back into it, and it started evolving into something else. I did a 25-minute scratch of that at Sprint Festival at Camden People's Theatre about a month ago. Yeah.
All right. And so we mentioned, obviously, when we were talking about how you worked with the animal studies teacher at RADA, and how it helped you kind of shape the play. Sort of how did he or she help?
Yeah, so it's a woman called Gabriella Maletta, who's wonderful. She was our animal transformation studies teacher at RADA. Mm-hmm. And it's quite an odd, animal studies is quite an odd thing to talk about, but whatever. We're talking about theatre, so we can talk about strange things. Essentially, the idea was I wanted to make a show about a series of experiences I had shortly following graduating from RADA, where I just suffered severe, debilitating panic attacks for like months, seemingly out of nowhere. And I decided I wanted to make a show about that, which, rightly or wrongly, if that's the right thing to do, I don't know, to kind of process it in a way. And so I came up with a one-man show, and I thought it would be cool to kind of do an animal study of a tiger. And the story ended up being, it was semi-autobiographical. The story was fictional, but the experiences it was talking about were personal. And it was about a guy who kind of, as his mental health deteriorates, he starts to turn more and more into a tiger until like a full transformation occurs. So I would just work with her. What you do is you go to the zoo and you watch tigers and absorb that. And then you do this weird, wonderful work on an animal transformation study, which is super wacky, but like when you see it done well, it is an amazing thing. Did you do that at drama school?
We didn't touch too much on animal studies, unfortunately, but it was something I was definitely hoping that we would. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm aware of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool thing, and I'll even revisit it now. Like if I'm find a character who I'm like, oh, this guy feels like a bit of a peacock in here, how he is. Like I
Mm,
will go and watch that animal and start to like put their like physical traits into like the character's physicality. For me, it was just one of those courses at school that I really, really liked, and thought was like a cool way into like the kind of essence of a character. If you could like, name the animal that they would inhabit
mm,
and then use that. I
yeah.
quite like that as an entry point.
Yeah, well, it's incredibly brave of you to channel something that's very personal to you and your life
Yeah,
into
in
sort of
hindsight, I probably should have left it a bit longer.
art.
It was sort of very soon after the experience. I was like, right, time to make a show about this thing that's sort of still happening. Um, but looking back on it, it was very cathartic. And
Yeah.
I don't think theatre should be therapy, but it was sort of therapeutic doing that.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's good because you're giving people the opportunity to talk about something which some people might not be comfortable in talking about, and I think a lot of theatre recently has helped people with that. Like A Little Life, and of course, Prima Facie, which I've talked about a lot on this show. It's helping people to sort of face something in themselves and that they feel comfortable sharing it as well. Obviously, not forcing it out of them, of course not, but they feel that there's a platform to sort of say that other people have been through similar things, so then we can all
Yeah,
talk about it together.
100%. And I guess when that stuff was first happening with me, my one thought was like, God, what is this thing that is happening that I am uniquely going through that no one else has been through? And then, you find relief in learning like, oh, this
Mm,
is actually like super common and there's ways of dealing with it. Like
mm,
that's where the relief is. So I think you're right. Shows like A Little Life or Prima Facie or whatever they may be, just by shining a light on that kind of stuff is a valid thing to make people go like, oh, I'm not like alone in feeling this way.
yeah. It's very much we're all in the same boat as such. So,
Yeah.
speaking of boats, let's jump into your work on.
Great segue.
I don't know. That was good.
No, that's
Um,
brilliant.
Speaking of boats, let's
Yeah,
talk
let's go
about
to the Orca.
before we let's go to the Orca. Yeah, let's talk about your work in The Shark is Broken, which you were an understudy in that as well as A Little Life. And sadly, I missed it in London, but I think I was in the crux of drama school at the time, so time was a bit limited. But I hope it comes back. Any producers of the show listening or watching, please bring it back. I love
Yeah.
Jaws. I mean, it was my childhood film, still is very much my favorite. Please bring it back. Love to see it. So tell me about the show. So the premise, from what I understood, was it was a kind of a meta description of what it was like filming, a very much behind the scenes journey of what it was like bringing that film to the screen.
Yeah, it's a piece of theatre about the making of the film Jaws. So the three actors are playing the three actors, Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, and Robert Shaw.
Mm,
And, you're kind of just seeing them stuck on this boat while they had to wait for the shark to work and try not to kill each other in the process because there was real drama and rivalries, particularly between Dreyfus and Shaw.
all
So
right.
it's a real meta kind of comedy. And if you're a Jaws fan, it's like there's so many Easter eggs in there for you. Um, and yeah, it's just a great show. And as I said before, like it brought in a theatre audience I hadn't seen before. It was like Jaws fans, like every
Mm,
night, loads of Jaws fans, because that film is so widely loved and it is so many people's like favorite film or childhood movie or movie that they went on their first date with their now
yeah, mine.
partner or whatever that is. And they were fanatical. You get people in the audience with like dorsal fins tied to their heads. Yeah, it's a great show. There's a lot of love in there.
Yeah, and talk about super fans. The people walking in the theater being in their theatre best attire, and there's a guy walking in with a big dorsal fin on his
Yeah,
head.
yeah, yeah. Like every
Hilarious.
night. Yeah, yeah. It was great.
Yeah.
It was a real joyful thing to be a part of.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm a big fan of Jaws. Like I said, it was like my favorite film growing up. I didn't realize there was tension between the actors. I mean, not obviously because the shark was broken and they need to film and all that kind of thing, but was it, without giving sort of too much away, was there really a competition between those three actors, between Roy, Robert, and Richard?
No, I mean, Roy was kind of the peacekeeper. He was kind of the one being like, let's just get through this and get along. And it was really Dreyfus and Shaw. Shaw, was an alcoholic, and Dreyfus was a young, upcoming star who was wildly insecure. And Shaw would kind of like mess with him, and they would press each other's buttons. And pretty sure it like came to blows on set between the two of them. Like the film was like in turmoil because these guys were not getting along, and they were stuck on this boat, like this very claustrophobic thing that they couldn't leave. So yeah, I don't want to give away too much of what happened in case it comes back, which I hope it does.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, there was some real drama on the set.
It's fascinating because we were talking before we came on. Yeah, it sounds like every Jaws fan's going to get so much out of this, because all the lines, we're going to need a bigger boat, or there's so much. There's got to be another one. There's going to need a bigger boat. The Indianapolis speech.
Yeah, the
That's in there.
Indianapolis speech. And I mean, it kind of bounces between you're seeing them offset and out of character to filming certain scenes from the film. So you get a bit of both,
It's very kind of multi-layered, or like a meta sort of.
It's super meta. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. It's very, very meta, but wildly funny and really touching in some moments, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of has it all. And so it's like, a 90-minute comedy straight through, no interval. Love that. Very different to Little Life in terms of
Yeah.
length and topic. But yeah, it's a super fun show, and I'm with you, man. I hope it comes back as well.
Yeah. No, I'd love to talk about it more. I could talk about Jaws for ages, but obviously we don't want to spoil anything, so it's all good. But the reason I bring it up is, like A Little Life, you were the understudy to two parts, to Richard Dreyfuss and to Robert Shaw's, the characters as such. And I think I've had a few understudies on the show, and I've really I saw an opportunity where to kind of shine a light on understudies and just how important they are, and it's people say, oh, you're getting paid to not do anything, you learn the lines and just sit in the dressing room, but actually you're on red alert the whole time, particularly because The Shark Was Broken was through that transitional period of when the theatre started to open back up again after COVID. And then you had cast members, taking breaks off because they fell ill or something like that. So it sounded like on that show in particular that you were constantly like you were in it you were performing a lot as well, not just sitting in the dressing room.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I did 10 shows as Dreyfus and 2 as Shaw, and I think understudies combined, I think we covered close to 30 shows between us.
Yeah,
which is a lot. But it was right in the height of that COVID, where like it was still around, but the theaters were opening back up. So it was really like battle stations, like every day. And you're right, like that feeling, like the anxiety is like, you wake up and the first thing you check is your phone. And if there's like a missed call from a number you don't know, suddenly like you realize that you're on this like rubber band of tension. And then as soon as your phone rings, it kind of, the threat of what that could mean, in terms of your day changing very quickly. You're sort of on tenterhooks the whole time. Once you do it once, you can relax a bit. Once you've got it under your belt that like, I've done it. Like I have gone on stage and done that, and I now know that I can do that if they need me to. That feeling dissipates slightly, but kind of the longer that you don't go on, the more that rubber band is like stretching And to be completely honest, yeah, it's a really like you kind of don't realize it at the time, and it would only be like friends would remind me of this. You're just living in this really, really anxious place the whole
Mm.
time. And for me anyway, it would really dominate my thinking, and even as far as like I'd be careful about like what food I was eating in case I have to go on stage that day, and I don't want to be like, bloated and tired, or oh, maybe I shouldn't have a beer tonight just in case tomorrow for the matinee. Like it sort of dominates your thinking in
Mm.
all aspects of life, or for me anyway, it definitely did. So it is an anxiety inducing thing to do, but I
Yeah.
think a really, really good thing for an actor to do.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in just a second, but I'm just curious to know about, was there, obviously you mentioned there, when you wake up and you look at your phone, and then obviously if it's like a non-matinee day, which is most days anyway, you're thinking, okay, right, I've got all day to prepare. So it'll be like 10 o'clock in the morning, so I've got till 7 to make sure I have enough to eat and I get in the right zone, get to the theatre in good time, and you're there. But I'm just, was there ever a moment where you were, say, like an hour or two from showtime or something like that, and you haven't got a call, and you're going, okay, maybe I've got the day off today, and then suddenly there's a phone call to say, oi, someone's gone down, we need you in 2 hours, can you make it to the theatre?
No, I never had that, but there was a week where the understudy for sure went on, and after about his third day of doing it, every night you're kind of listening to them on the tannoys, if you want to. And each day his voice was going a bit, going a bit, going a bit. So in my head, I was like, God, like the way it worked on Shark is Broken is you have a first cover and a second cover. So my first cover is Dreyfus and my second cover is Shaw. Will is first cover for Shaw, second cover for Scheider, and Tim was first cover for Scheider, second cover for Dreyfus. So you're kind of like covering bases between you.
Yeah.
So in order for me to go on as Shaw, the principal actor has to go down, and then the understudy, his first cover, has to go down. There's kind of two people that have to go down.
Oh God.
And I remember when I took the role, Shaw's about 30 years older than me,
Yeah.
sort of not my casting bracket. And I remember thinking, like, I bet I go on it. Like, I guarantee you, if I don't put the work in for my second cover, it's going to happen. You're going to get called up.
Yeah.
I prepared it super hard, and sure enough, like I think even my dad said to me, he was like, you're going to go on as Shaw. I was like, no way. Like there's two people in between me and that happening. And yeah, sure enough, Will lost his voice halfway through covering for Ian, and there was one night where it was really croaky, and they asked me to get into costume during the show. So I was kind of sitting in the stairwell and we're just waiting, listening to the thing.
Oh my
And he
God.
got through it, but then I got told that night, tomorrow you need to like take a day off Will's back so he can rest his voice.
Yeah.
And that next day was a Thursday, so it was a matinee day. So I covered both those shows the next day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it is that thing with understudying, like you don't know how it's going to happen. I remember there was a good month on Shark is Broken when no one went on. And then you start to think like, oh, no one's going to go on. Like we're not going on.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like it can change in an instant, because people have lives and people get ill and X, Y, and Z. So yeah, you're kind of at a constant state of readiness, which is a weird place to live for an extended period of time. You only realize it afterwards when your body starts to relax and you start to let it go. You're like, holy moly, like the last few months I've been carrying so much tension just with this knowledge of like I might have to do that tonight or tomorrow or
Yeah, because I mean it's a huge thing because I think for any actors who are listening to this or watching, and they're thinking about and they are potentially got an understudy offer or going for an understudy offer, and my head's completely changed about it now. Before I would think, no, I don't want to do that. I want to be the main guy. But actually, no. If you take the job, you get to learn, and of course, you're in the rehearsal room a lot of the time as well. You're there learning from the leads. You're watching the directors do it and taking notes and everything and mental notes about what you want to bring and like that. Like that moment you move left, that moment you move right, and all that kind of thing. But well, what would you say to actors who have, have still got a bit iffy about taking up understudy roles? What would you say to them?
I would say, like, not only should you accept it if you get the chance, you should actively seek it out. Like,
Mm,
it's a really, it's harder than doing the actual thing. It really is, because you
yeah,
get so much less time to work on it. And you're not just learning one part, you're learning often multiple parts. And the bottom line really is it will make you a better actor. Like it might be painful, and there might be times where you feel like, I kind of feel like I'm being paid not to act. And all of those emotions you will go through. But ultimately, like, it's such a challenge, and it will just make you better. Like, you will leave that experience a better actor, because you are being set a sort of impossible task when you see it on paper, and you will rise to it because you have to. And
mm,
also, like, yeah, those feelings of like, oh, well, I want to be doing the actual thing and I want to be the lead, and those very human feelings that we all have as actors. You could see it in a way like, take Little Life, for example.
yeah,
I would never be cast as Jude or Willem, because those go to named actors. They're lead roles in a huge West End show with a big director. If I'm going to get a role in a show like that, it's going to be a very minor role. I mean, that show didn't really have minor roles. But if you're an understudy, you're getting the opportunity to learn two unbelievable roles that are
mm,
super challenging,
yeah,
and sort of get the tutoring of probably a very good actor who's experienced, almost as your kind of personal, not guide, but someone that you can watch and learn from and be a fly on the wall and just soak up every aspect of it. And on top of making you a better actor, it will humble you in like a really good way, because all those kind of feelings of like, oh, I want this and I should be that. It's like, no, dude, this is your role within the thing,
mm,
and that is it. And it's in a way an exercise in like stoicism. Um, but you will leave with, I think, increased humility and
yeah,
patience, and um, the feeling of like, God, I did that. Because when you
mm,
first get that offer on paper, you kind of read it and go like, I mean, certainly when I got it for Little Life, I kind of was like, how? Like, I've read it, and I'd watched the Dutch version of it on video, and like Jude alone, it's like,
it's
that's
enormous.
one thing, and then it's like,
Mm,
and also this, and at any point, either with maybe a minute's notice. Like, it's an impossible sounding thing, but
yeah,
you'll surprise yourself because you're in that situation. You'll rise to it because you have to. And yeah, you'll just leave a better actor. You will. If you go into it just with a sense of like humility and knowing what your role is in this thing and seeing it as an opportunity, in the same way that drama school is, to like, I'm going to spend 6 months, like, as we talked about before,
mm,
doing this thing like every day, surrounded by it, watching it, learning from people who are very good and experienced in that role. It's a real opportunity. So I would never like tell someone not to do it, like painful as it may be at times during that process.
yeah.
You'll just leave better. You will. Like, I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. I think one thing that I've stuck with me really is it's obviously if someone gives you like a compliment on your performance or something like that and you think, right, I've got it. I know what I'm doing. Everything's fine. But then you try something else and then you have to sort of start again in a way. So what I mean to say is like, if you want to be like the best, if you want to get the best out of your craft, then surround yourself with people who are essentially better than you, and you're or more experienced in a way. I think more experienced is probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
But people who've been there, they've done it, they've made the mistakes, and then they can give you like their words of wisdom on how to make the best performance that you can, whilst not making the same mistakes that they did, so you're aware of them in a way.
Mhm.
And I would imagine. So, what was it like learning from still with the Shark is Broken, like the main actors with those guys? What were some of the big takeaways you got from that rehearsal room and that show?
Um, So the way it often works is the main cast will rehearse with the director, and the understudies will usually rehearse with the assistant director.
Okay.
On Shark is Broken, we would rehearse at like the same time in different spaces.
Okay.
Sometimes we dive into their rehearsal room because changes are being made, or you want to be present for conversations that are happening with the director.
Hmm.
Or you will watch the principal rehearsals during the day, and when their rehearsal finishes, the understudy rehearsal will begin. It's kind of it's probably different for every single show. Um, and I guess the takeaways are just like it's just an interesting room to be in, you know? Like both of them for different reasons. Like Shark is Broken was interesting because the dynamic was there is a director. The guy playing Robert Shaw also wrote the play. So the actor is the writer. So
Wow.
that's an interesting just dynamic to observe how
Yeah.
that works. And yeah, just being a fly on the wall in either of those rooms, you learn a lot because you see how people act in those roles and how those rooms work. I guess the same way, you know, your first time on a film set, you'd be a bit overwhelmed by like, God, I don't really understand how this is going. It's kind of a chance to get a soft entry there and be like, okay, like after this, when I'm not understudying down the lines, like I know how these rooms work
Yeah.
and I feel comfortable.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point because, like you say, you learn from these amazing people, been there and done it, and actually being an understudy is some, like you said earlier, people are like, yeah, but I'm being paid not to act, but you're getting paid to get experience and like really, really important experience on these things, and I haven't experienced it myself yet, but from what I've had conversations like right now with yourself and with other understudies like Danny Arlington, who was Jodie's understudy in Prima Facie, it feels like you might not get on stage very much, but you learn so much from just being in that room, and the knowledge you get from that, you then take on to the next job, and then when eventually you do get that lead, it's almost like you've got this wealth of experience behind you because you've seen how it works to get to you to deliver the performance as the lead, which you've wanted all this time. So it's a really good
Yeah,
stepping block. Would you agree?
100%. You will like earn some stars on your cape, if that's an expression.
Stars
You
on your
will
cape.
like you'll leave more experienced, you'll leave a better actor, you'll leave more comfortable in the knowledge that and also once you've done it as an understudy, so say you've learned multiple roles for a show, you learn all those roles really well, you
Mm,
potentially go on as one, maybe more of those roles. When then you then get cast in a show and it's like you have one role, you've already done a harder thing. Like now you can put all that same energy into just one.
yeah.
So like it will set you up really nicely, I think, and
Mm,
just treat it as like kind of like an internship or something like that. Like it's a learning opportunity, and you're being paid for it. Like
mm.
yeah, I can't emphasize enough. Like if I had a friend that had an offer and was calling me and asking me if I think they should do it, I would be like, just do it.
Yeah, yeah. Just
Like
it's an incredible opportunity. I
yeah,
spoke to Victoria Blunt recently, who was Andrew Scott's understudy in
yeah,
Valley,
yeah,
and she very much like yourself. She talks about how just the invaluable experience that she got from the rehearsal room, and she actually, I think, because the production sold out so quickly, and then she actually got her own show. It was an understudy show
yeah.
one night, which I thought was amazing. Um, and I think we'll talk about. Let's jump into it now. A Little Life, which I was very, very lucky to see. I was actually on stage. Actually, I managed to sit on
Oh,
stage with
cool.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You're in the splash zone.
I was, yeah, very much in the splash zone. Yeah, I walked out. There was blood all over me at the end, but no, I was very lucky because I just looked on the website and because it sold so quickly, I just saw this seat on stage that was left for a Thursday matinee. And usually, I don't really like going to matinees. I like going to the evening for the experience. But I thought, hey, screw it, just go. And my word, what a show it was. And I've said that on the show quite a few times. It's just the level of of dedication and expectation, not only from the leads, like you said, just like we've got one role each, but you yourself, sir, had to understudy Jude and Willem, two huge parts
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
that. And, you know, and for anyone who's not familiar with the show, it's a story about Jude St Francis and his dealing with the trauma of his early years of his life up to the age of 15, 16. And the play is about him in his late 30s, going to 40s and 50s, about how the trauma has gone through his life and how he's dealing with it. So, a little trigger warning for anyone who's watching or listening. We're going to talk about some of these things. So, just so you know. So, yeah, so we'll shoot back to the beginning on that one. How did you hear about the job, A Little Life?
To be completely honest, I'd not heard of it, and then the audition came through, and I recognized the cover of the book from seeing people reading it on the train.
Yeah.
So I immediately dived in and sort of read this monster book as quickly as I could.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it was. I had not heard of it, and then was suddenly diving straight into the depths of it.
Yeah, it's a monumental book. I mean, I was like yourself. I didn't know about the book until it sort of I saw because I'd watched James in Happy Valley and stuff, and I saw he was going to be in a play, and I saw it's called A Little Life, running time 3 hours 40 minutes, and I was
Yeah,
like, oh my God,
yeah,
what is this? But immediately I'm like, okay, what is this text and why is it so long? But so I managed to get a ticket. I watched it, then I read the book after I went to see the play, and just you know, Hanya Yanagihara, who is the writer, her way with words and her storytelling is just it's exquisite. It's exquisite work, and the way she's able to describe Jude's story is just not only breathtaking and sad, but it's beautiful at the same time. So,
yeah.
so did you have to audition for both parts, or was it, or they both offered
Um,
you?
yeah, yeah. You audition. I auditioned. There was, I believe, 2 rounds, and you audition. You prepare both parts for this for the audition. So yeah, you're going in preparing both parts for that audition.
Yeah. So, what? Who is? We'll start with Jude. Who is he to yourself? What's your opinion of him?
Who's Jude to me? Jude is a great source of anxiety for me. No, I don't know. I don't know, man. Like honestly, to be honest, when I think of like who is Jude, who is Willem, for me, they are things that I think back on as an actor. This is probably not the answer you're looking for, but when I think back on it, I go, God, I did that.
Yeah.
And when a challenge arises now, or something that I think like, oh, I don't know if I could do that, it's sort of a rock that I look back and go like, no, dude, like you did a pretty impossible thing in learning those two at the same time. So for me, it's this is purely from an acting point of view.
Mm.
I look back on those as like a real foundation in my confidence as an actor for when future things come in and I feel like anxious or like maybe I can't do that or, you know, out of my depth. It's like a bedrock for me to stand on and go like, no, like you learn these two quite extraordinary, challenging roles. In terms of the character himself, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. It would change a lot, like
Okay.
throughout the course of the run. And,
Okay.
you know, I was learning them in tandem. So it was a peculiar thing, you know. A note that I feel like I've often heard throughout the years is like when you're learning a scene, learn both parts of the scene so that you know how your words land on the other person from their point of view.
Mm.
And learning Jude and Willem together, I mean, the majority of their scenes are together.
Yeah.
So I felt like I got to know each character not only through the experience of learning that character, but from the experience of the person standing opposite them. And there was sort of a yin yang to Jude and Willem for me. Like, you know, each of them had things that the other one lacked. Um, so I guess I kind of saw those two roles as there was some unity between them when I think back to that show.
Yeah. There was an interview with the main cast with Hanya, and I think it was just before the show opened in the at the Pinter, and Zubin, who was the main oh God, I've forgotten his name.
Harold.
Harold, thank you. Main Harold said that when he first met Hanya, she said that she was so harsh on her characters, and one thing that she talked about with Luke, who was the main Willem, was that she said that he pretends constantly, and there's this dynamic between Jude and Willem. They're very good friends, and then for anyone who doesn't know, slight spoiler is that they end up becoming a thing. They become a couple, and Jude and Willem was. It feels like he pretends constantly. Like he pretends that Jude isn't as damaged as he is, that everything's going to be okay. You know, it's fine, it's all good. But I think there's always like, I don't know if you discovered this, but I saw in Willem like this underlying feeling really, really deep down that he knows that things aren't very good, but he
Yeah.
can't listen to it because he wants everything to be okay.
Yeah, which I think is a very human thing that I certainly do in life. If I've got someone that I'm worried about, you do put on that brave face of like, oh, they're fine. Like, they'll be all right. Like, I'm
Yeah, of
sure.
course,
But then
of
there's
course.
that burdening feeling in the pit of your stomach that is there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with you. And the writing sort of so beautifully shows that because you've picked up on that clearly.
Mm.
That there is this, there's this ever present sense of foreboding of like, is he going to do that again? I don't know if he is. I hope he's not. So I'm going to just act like everything's good in the hope that it is,
Mm.
but not giving too many spoilers away. Like, you know, it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There was a moment in the play which I'm sure just watching it is sort of you see everything that happens to Jude and Wyndham and everything, but particularly there's one scene where I really had to just sit back and go like what the fuck, and that one of those scenes was it's in the book as well. The way that Hanya describes it is just it's stunning yet so quite scary. Was that Jude finds no sorry Willem finds Jude in the bathroom and he's about to harm himself, and he stops him and then takes out one of these razors and then proceeds to actually swipe it across his chest. And that was the first moment in the play I thought I was genuinely like, what? I was genuinely like the moment of like, what is going on?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just out of curiosity, how did you manage to do that? Was it something in the prop or was it?
I'm not sure if I should give away the secrets or not.
Okay, well if you can't, you can't. But
I won't just in case I can't, but
okay, sure.
I'll say it's quite a simple thing. And as with most like simple answers and effects, hugely effective. Like
Yeah,
that would get like an audible gasp almost every night because it kind of comes out of nowhere.
it really does.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. If I told you how it was done, you'd probably go like, "Oh."
No,
Like,
honestly, I
it's
wouldn't. Yeah, no,
it's
I
nothing
don't want to get you in
fancy,
trouble.
but massively effective. Like because it just sort of appears, doesn't it? And yeah, the audience would always like gasp at that moment.
Mm. And
Yeah,
there's
I mean, there's a bunch of moments like that in there.
yeah,
It's sort of relentless in that kind of shock horror moments that happen in that play.
yeah, obviously, and yeah, if you can't explain it, then okay, I won't force it out of you. But a big shout out to the props department and everything for making that
Yeah,
work.
I mean,
It did a really, really good job.
yeah, as you know from watching it, it was very realistic the way they did a lot of that stuff. And
Mm.
the knives and the razors and everything were real and sharp.
Oh
Um,
wow,
so there's like danger in that. Well, there is and there isn't, we do it in a very safe way. But it was quite frightening to do. I remember the first time I had to do the Jude stuff, I went completely like ghost white because I think when your brain watches that, it doesn't really know the difference.
yeah,
It does look really, really convincing. And I think that's why a lot of audience members had quite like a visceral reaction because of how realistic it looked. We would get people fainting all the time. There were constant show stops.
yeah. I've spoken to a few people on the show about it. Elliot, Emilio, and Rowan, who have just so many times that I think was it Emilio? I think told me that there was one week there was like three show stops in one
Yeah,
week.
I think there was one show where there was like multiple show stops
Yeah,
and it would just be people passing out.
yeah, or it might have been three in one
Yeah,
show.
yeah, I think that did happen. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they were in the middle of it, and then in the audience they would hear someone shouting, going, "Stop the show! Stop the show!"
Yeah.
Stop.
It's quite
And
frightening when it happens, there's this
scary.
feeling of like panic. Because I would often sit, well, not often, I'd make a point like once a week to sit in and watch. just to keep it kind of in my head because you don't want to forget things.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes I would watch and I'd be like, today I'm just going to watch Willem and just keep my eye on him. And the next day I'd be like, okay, today is Jude and I'll just watch Jude. But that feeling in the audience of when someone screams out like, stop, 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 it's frightening. Yeah.
It's scary. It's scary.
Yeah.
I
And I guess it
remember.
just, sorry, go on.
No. I was just saying. At the interval, I remember because I was on stage. We weren't allowed to stay on stage because they had to change the scene around and stuff. So we were ushered out at the interval. I remember going up the stairs out into the main foyer, and there was some group of girls coming out of the dress circle, and already at the interval, you know, they're just wiping tears out their eyes. They're just absolutely just devastated. And I'm thinking, and I think Emilio told me that when they finished, there was one show where they finished the at the interval, and he heard someone in the audience go, "Bloody hell, it can't get any more worse than that, can it?"
I heard that once, yeah. I was sitting watching it once and there was someone having a similar reaction next to me. And she said something like, God, I hope the second half it picks up a bit. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be like, oh,
Yeah, you're just thinking to yourself, "Oh no."
yeah,
Yeah.
you're in for more. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose like some of the bonuses of being understudy and I'm right in thinking you actually never got the opportunity to perform at the Pinter or the Savoy, is that right?
Yeah, so completely different to The Shark is Broken, where understudies went on around 30 times. No understudy ever went on during the run of A Little Life at both the Pinter and the Savoy. We did an understudy run, but during an actual program performance, none of them were covered. And that's just, you know, again, like it's luck of the draw with understudying. You don't know, like at the very least, you'll get to do an understudy run.
Of course.
Well, you should certainly ask for one or make sure that is happening if you're going to understudy. But yeah, no actors ever went down during that, which is pretty phenomenal given how many times they were doing it and, you know, how long and demanding the show is. It's a real like badge of honor to wear, I think, to be like, we did that full run. Yeah.
Were you guys offered, because I would imagine, were you given like seats in the auditorium where you could sit and watch performances
Yeah.
as much as you wanted, right?
Yeah, it was kind of always open to us. So if you wanted to go and watch the show, there would usually be one or two seats next to the tech desk that they usually kept aside that you could just go in. And also sometimes you might just want to watch the first half because you've forgotten. And that's the other thing, you know, like when you're like between Jude and Willem, you know what, the show's 3 hours, 40 minutes. Jude sort of doesn't leave the stage. Combined, that's about 7 hours of text. But it's often not the text that you're worried about. It's like, God, where did he put that pen?
Yeah.
It's like stuff like that kind of drives you mad. You're like,
Yeah.
Jude is sort of dressing and undressing, and you think like, where does that sock go in hour two of the show?
Hour 2 and 15 minutes. Like,
Yeah, so it's
yeah, I mean, it was a huge like demand on like, particularly for, just out of curiosity, that when you did the understudy run, were you Jude or were you Willem?
I was Jude, and you know, there were 4 understudies for 8 roles. So one of the understudies, Mark, he was actually covering Caleb, Trailer, Brother Luke, Andy, and Harold.
What?
Yeah, he was. I mean, I guess the 3 Caleb, Trailer, Brother Luke, that's one actor does that. But you know, you're juggling a lot. So when we did the understudy run, there was 4 understudies, and then 4 of the principal cast did it with us. So Luke, Zach, Emilio, and Elliot performed with us.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, how can you understudy? Like, I think I've got the program here actually. Have a look at this guy. Yeah, I got Zubin's.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
One. Let's see. So you got who is this guy? I need to see what he's doing. He's here somewhere.
Yeah, there's going to be a bunch of names.
Oh, there you go. So, well, Hammer's bit. Yeah, and Harold, Brother Luke, Trailer, Caleb, and Andy. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's sort of like you can't think about it all in one go.
There's you. There's your name.
There's Lorna below. Yeah. You can't think about it as like one thing, you know, because it will just overwhelm you. So I would just every day I would look at something, not the whole thing. I'd be like, today I'm looking at these three scenes for Willem, and that's what I'm focusing on today.
Mm.
And tomorrow I'll look at these two bits for Jude. And you kind of have to just divide it into chunks, because looking at it all in one go will just really overwhelm you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah, and there's a moment in Act Two which people in the audience at the interval said, "Oh, it couldn't get any worse, can it?" But there's a moment in Act Two where I spoke about this with Elliot actually, where it's Trailer and Jude, and long story short, Trailer's trying to get rid of him, and he puts him in the boot of his car, drives him to a secluded location, and just gets him out of the car and just says, "Run." And he chases him in the car, and being on stage, being up close to James and seeing the run. I said to Elliot, it's almost like being up that close in person, but I'm sure with everyone in the theatre, it was like you were running with Jude, you were running with him, and you've got the actress playing Anna saying, "Run, run, run, run." I mean, what was that experience like when you did that in the rehearsal room and then the run?
Really frightening, to be honest with you. Like, that role of Jude is frightening.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about roles, if you look at like all of Shakespeare's characters or Chekhov's or whatever,
Mm.
I think Jude, I've just never seen anything like it in terms of what you are asked to do on stage. Like, it's a really frightening thing. So, but then it's also one of those things where like the thought is often worse than the experience. Like, you build it up in your head to be this really terrifying thing, and then when you do it, it's actually like hugely liberating. And our understudy run, I think it came in like month 6, so there was kind of 6 months of just like thinking about it and like,
Yeah.
what's this going, as we said earlier, like that rubber band of tension just getting more and more tense. And then doing it, early on in the run, not that, yeah, I was chatting to James, and he was obviously quite tired by like the experience of doing 8 shows a week, 6 days a week.
Yeah, of course.
I can't remember. I said something like, "Yeah, man, but like, imagine like after this, like, what can anyone throw at you? Like, you could do anything." And he said something like, "Yeah, but what will live up to this?" And I didn't fully understand it at the time, because I was so in a place of anxiety of like, Jesus Christ, just how
Yeah.
am I going to do this? And then after I did it in the understudy run, it sort of the next day, it fully landed what he meant. And I was like, God, he's right. Like,
Yeah.
what a character, what a thing to do. Like, what did, like, something to like bite your teeth into. That role is just kind of the top of the mountain in terms of what it will demand of you. And then weirdly, like, since then, even in things I watch in the theatre now and film, seem somewhat tame in comparison. I feel like
Right.
it's changed my threshold of now what I find like stimulating as like an actor.
Oh, you and me both. You and me both.
Yeah.
I remember seeing just scenes in which, you guys, which you did, obviously in the rehearsal room, both, as yourself as Jude and as Willem. But like the others, I mean, that the other guy playing 5 parts, I mean, my God, I mean, I can't imagine what that experience was
Yeah.
like.
And it's challenging, because during rehearsals, so we've got our 4 understudies, but
Mm.
we don't have the other 4 characters. So any scene I would have ever done with Willem, it would be someone, one of the technical crew, or Alice, the assistant director, on the God mic, and no Willem in front of me. And
Oh,
you're just acting opposite no one.
oh God.
So the first time we did that, I'd never done it with a Willem. I'd never done it, with those people on stage doing it. It was a real like trial by fire type thing for all of us as understudies. Yeah,
Yeah.
again, just another example of like, here, like, it's a great challenge, and it will make you better.
Oh, yeah, hugely. And, it was one of those shows that I think it comes along every now and then, and you see something like that, and you think, just theatre can do so much. And I mean, what a story, a show, and the way that Evo had put it together, and the cast that he put together, and obviously the talented understudies like yourself and everyone. Just it was one of those things that I walked out the theater and I just thought just so many things going through my head. I remember thinking like, A, how did they do that? Because I went to see a matinee, and the first thing that went through my head was they've got like an hour off and they've got to do
Yeah,
all that all over again in the space of like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
yeah, crazy.
And I'm like, how do they do that? And yeah, and but one thing that I think that's stuck out is that it seemed like the company that looked after you, is it Wessex Grove, I think it was.
Grove, yeah.
Yeah, they really looked after you, and I think you guys offered therapy and stuff like that if you wanted it to help you through it. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They kind of went above and beyond with that stuff. So there was a therapist that every person involved in the production, not just the actors, had access to as often as they want, as much as it's available. A woman
Yeah,
called Victoria Abbott. Um, and I think for many people, if not all, on that show, she became a real anchor for everyone. And it's one of those things, kind of like an intimacy coordinator or something like that, when you have that, and then you think, God, how could we have done this without that?
yeah,
You
mm,
know, like it's such a. I remember when I first read that that was going to be available to us, I was like, oh wow, I've never like encountered that before.
mm,
And then afterwards, I was like, wow, thank God they did that because it was so helpful.
mm. Is it
Yeah.
Sarah Green was your intimacy coordinator, wasn't she?
Yeah. And that was another thing. Like after that, I'd never worked with an intimacy coordinator. And I think it's quite a new, maybe it's not a new role, but it's very like now shows need them. Like if there's scenes of intimacy, there will be an intimacy coordinator. And I
Mm,
don't think that was the case, maybe even as early as like 5 years ago. Maybe it
mm.
was, but this was my first experience with it.
Yeah, it's still very new, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, and as you know from watching the show, there's a lot of scenes in there that are
yeah,
violent and disturbing. And yeah, thinking back, I just go, I can't imagine not having her there in that
yeah,
role doing that. So Wessex, yeah, they ticked all the boxes with regards to like giving you the things that will help you through the experience of these next 8 months.
yeah. And I think, you mentioned the intimacy there, and that on top of that, like you said, there is a lot of violence in this play, but there's also some nice moments. There is some reprieve for Jude at some
Yeah.
point, and my
Oh
God,
yeah.
does he need it? My God. But when you're finding that intimacy with each other, and you've got someone there to kind of help you through, what was the process of finding that intimacy between like yourself and, as Jude or as Willem and the other person that you were with?
Well, I suppose the tricky thing was that Jude's intimate scenes are with Willem or brother Luke or Caleb or
Caleb,
Trey.
yeah. Yeah.
So I had never done that stuff with Luke or Elliot until we did it for the run, really. We went through it morning of.
Okay.
I had rehearsed it with Mark, the other understudy. And it's just sort of a process of like blocking almost. It just takes all the emotion out of it, and it's kind of like a paint by numbers approach of like it feels more like blocking,
Yeah.
which I think is a really useful way. And you check in with each other each day. You're going to do a scene like that before you do the scene. You and the other actor check in. How are we doing? Do you feel like doing everything today? Do you want to leave something out? Totally fine. Do the thing, and then afterwards check in again to
Yeah.
be like, how was that? Was that okay? Did you injure yourself? Were you ever worried? No, we're all good. Okay, cool. So it's sort of like, and the intimacy director was the one that showed us this approach, and it just bookended it really nicely
Mm.
in a way that I just can't imagine not having that, and like being presented with a scene like any of those in there and just being told like go. I'd be like,
Yes. Like,
what?
whoa,
How?
whoa, hang
Where?
on. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I need someone to really break this down, and like even before you do those scenes, you talk about it. Like, how's this going to work? Because there's so many questions surrounding that. So yeah, it's a vital role, especially on a show like this. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I suppose like one question I had for you today was like to you personally, obviously I've asked you about Jude and Willem and who they are, etc. But like what do you think from your perspective? What do you think the play stands for, or this story, this book, this world of a little life? What does it stand for?
I mean, I think it probably stands for many things. In a way, and this is kind of depressing, but here's a story of someone that suffered horrific childhood trauma and
Mm,
did not prevail or triumph, and it does not end well for them or any of the people around them.
yeah,
And in a way, I quite liked that, in that it didn't tie this bow on it, and it didn't, make it. I think there's probably a lot of stories like that in real life. And as we were talking about earlier, kind of shining a light on the reality of situations is an important thing. This was one of those situations where maybe it doesn't work out.
mm,
But then on the flip side of that,
yeah,
what you do have is you see someone who's gone through stuff like that learning to trust again and love again, and the support networks that can build up around that kind of thing and how much they help, and the love between the other characters and Jude. So it's got, kind of both sides of the coin there. You are diving into like perhaps the harsh reality of some instances like this,
mm,
but you're also seeing, the sort of antidotal effects that characters like Willem or Harold had on Jude, or Anna. It's not giving you one thing, it's giving you a kind of multi-layered look at a
yeah,
really dark thing, and quite a sort of harsh reality at the end, almost,
yeah.
which
It's
I sort of liked in a way. I was like, it's not going to end with this nice everything's okay
yeah,
bow.
yeah.
um
Unfortunately, for some people, it's in life, it doesn't. I think Hanya even said that in an interview that she wanted to write about a character who specifically, sadly, didn't get better. You know,
yeah.
and such is the case. Life has many different outcomes, people, blah, 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 but that unfortunately it's part of it. And it's a very beautiful yet amazingly sad story that I think but needs to be told because if it did, obviously I think people need to have an awareness of these things. So people who are in a place like Jude's, they're now, because as a result of the play, we are able to pull them out of. There are better opportunities to pull them out of that
Yeah.
place and make them sort of recognize that. And then there's a line in the play which is, I think Anna says, "If you allow it, the rest of your life will be blessed."
Mm.
And if you allow yourself to leave these experiences behind, the rest of your life, it will get better. It will get better.
Yeah. And I think also, like, even if you're not someone who has had some experiences like that,
Yeah.
you may know someone or encounter someone in life, and through watching the other characters and how they kind of approach Jude, you might learn a thing or two about how to help in a situation like that. I think it's sort of accessible to all, but it's massively confronting, that play, isn't it? Like, people had incredibly visceral reactions. I would often leave the theatre and there would be people in floods of tears outside. And sometimes I would think, God, is this helping?
Mm.
And sometimes I would be like, I would go back and forth a little bit. But ultimately, I've just never seen anything like that in the theatre. Like, the first time I watched it, I was just like, and similarly, that scene with Trailer, with the light.
Mm.
God, I've never felt that way in a theatre. I was just like, this is like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I want when I go to the theatre. That's always what I hope it will be, is that feeling of like, most of the time when you go to the theatre, it's fine. But
Mm.
on those rare few occasions, it sounds like super wanky, but like, it sort of is something that, like, at its best, it could sort of change your life, even in a small way.
Yeah.
And I do think that perhaps that play had that effect on members of the audience.
Oh, yeah.
I'd never seen anything like it in London before.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it still sticks to me even today. You know, we're having this conversation about it, you know, and still talking to other people who were part of it. You know, it's still I still get flashbacks from the show. You know, and I think you know as impactful and you know devastating as it was, you know, it shows that you want to leave the theater because sometimes you go to the theater and you see a play and you walk out like, well, that was nice,
Yeah.
and you just
Lighting was good.
yeah, lighting
Yeah.
was good.
I'd
Yeah,
rather be in the one where people are leaving, people are fainting, people are hating it, people are loving it. Like that's kind of what I seek out, to be honest with you.
yeah, and then sometimes you go to the theater, and I've had this experience myself on a couple of occasions where I've actually walked out at the interval because
Yeah.
I've just watched the first act and gone, God, that was awful. No,
Yeah.
I'm going for a drink. No,
But yeah, exactly. Me too.
yeah,
But the hope always is when I sit down at the theater, like, come on, like, let this be the one that gives me that feeling that I'm looking for. I always hope it will be that.
yeah, yeah.
It's quite rare that that does happen.
Yeah, it's genuinely just one of those things I think a lot of people will continue to talk about, and yeah, a lot of people would love to see. But yeah, it's just brilliant. But it's a shame that I didn't get to see your Jude or your Willem. But
Oh, that's okay. I was just happy to get to do it and kind of exercise that demon. I think if we hadn't have got the understudy run and I'd have learned those roles and never done them, it would sort of be like theatrical edging or something. A huge weight was lifted after doing the understudy run. Yeah.
yeah, and just the importance of it. Just on a lighter, I know we've talked about some quite heavy stuff now, and you know it's great to hear. But you know, I'm just very aware of we are talking about some tricky stuff.
Yeah.
Just on a bit of a lighter note, was there ever a was that I just get this image of you just knocking on James's or Luke's door, just going, "Hey, how's it going? Do you fancy a night off?" So anything like that?
No, I mean, no, there was never anything like that. There's always occasional moments where like maybe someone's a bit late that day and you're like,
Uh oh.
where are they?
Where is he? Where's
No,
James?
I
Where is
mean,
he?
I I like to know like long in advance if possible. Obviously, that's very rarely the case, but
Yeah.
no, there was never anything like that. We would joke about stuff like that,
Oh, of
but
course, of course.
yeah.
Yeah, just Victoria Blunt did a very good sketch because she was understudy to Andrew, and she did this lovely sketch where she was like knocking on his door, going, "Hello, Andrew, how's it going? You feeling well? Yeah, yeah, you okay? Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, did you say something? No, all right. Sorry, I'll come back later." So, it's like that thing
Yeah,
of
I
like,
mean, every day I would come, you go in through the stage door and you tick your name on the thing, and
mm,
immediately my eyes go like, is Luke here? Yeah, Luke's here. Okay, I can relax. For Willem, is James is not ticked off yet. Okay, so can't relax quite yet. But yeah, every day I would look at that list and be like, are they here? They're here. They're here. And even then, even when you're sort of never safe, and especially in a show like that where like things could go wrong,
oh yeah,
someone might have to leave the stage. And James was diabetic as well. Like he had
yeah,
insulin hidden around the stage and sugar, glucose to and the stage crew would monitor his levels, which was like, at any moment he could have had a hypo or whatever it's called.
hypoglycemic or something like
Yeah, it
that.
was kind of like, even when I was at the theater, I was always like, my ears were listening to the tannoy. I was constantly thinking about it,
Yeah,
which I mean, the only answer to that is like I'm anxious about having to go on at short notice.
yeah, of course.
The answer to that, work really hard so that if that does happen, you feel ready. So I mean, I did a mental thing. I recorded the tannoy, like a
Mm.
full recording of the show on my phone, and then I took it home. And on GarageBand, I would cut out Willem's lines or Jude's lines, and then like on a Sunday, I would turn my flat into Lisbonard Street and run it as like Jude on my own,
Oh wow.
just to stave off the anxiety, because like the feeling of dread is like, what happens if I have to go on and I'm not ready,
Mm.
which is a reason why like this job will make you work hard to get rid of that feeling, and you will leave like a better actor for it, I think.
Yeah. it's a really good thing to have, and and now if I was offered an understudy job, I'd take it. I'd snap your hand off because I think not only like we've talked about, but you leave a better actor, as you say, but also you're gaining loads of experience from some of the best in the business. And speaking of which, I know you said that your runs were mostly with the assistant director and stuff. But obviously at the helm was, of course, Ivo van Hove, who was just a visionary and an incredible, incredible director. And I will work with you one day, Ivo, I will. But what was it like working with Ivo? Because it seems like he has a very brilliant way of telling a story, but without needing too much on stage to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I was very much a fly on the wall for that, like I sat in on those rehearsals and I would try and sit near so I could hear what was going on.
Mm,
And he was really not what I was expecting. Like having watched a lot of his work, View from the Bridge and all these sort of quite visceral shows,
mm,
and with the reputation he has, I, for whatever reason, was expecting this sort of tyrant or something, or like a real like domineering director. And he's actually this, really sweet, lovely, sort of softly spoken man who sort of leads with a very light touch and a lot of heart.
yeah.
Um, and it was interesting to see, every director is different. And sometimes Evo's notes would just be something like, that bit, just make that bit needs to be faster. Like, is that it? What about what my character's going through? Like, just quicker, just it needs to be quicker. And then you'd watch them do it quicker and go like, fuck, he's right. It's so much better. Like he really has, in terms of like aesthetics, when it comes to like every aspect, he has a real like, pulse on that stuff. He really knows what he's doing.
Mm.
I mean, obviously. So yeah, it was interesting to watch him kind of at the helm. I would just sort of sit quietly and be taking notes and looking at what's going on.
Yeah, I mean and again, just the opportunity to learn from someone like that, and to hear how he directs and how it's just one simple note can just change the dynamic of a scene completely, and as you say, make it better. And you're like, I never saw it like that. It simply just changed the tempo,
Yeah, yeah.
and
It'd be
it,
something simple sometimes,
yeah,
and you watch it again and go like, "Wow, how did he know?" Like it's completely, he was so right. And
yeah,
yeah, I guess that is why he is who he is. Like he's sort of a master when it comes to every aspect of that stuff.
yeah. I suppose like just got a few more questions for you, Tom, and then we can sort of finish up. Um, So I suppose what the experience of, we talked at great good length about being an understudy and how it's helpful and all that, but like specifically on this show, like, regardless, of being an understudy, but when you're actually rehearsing as Jude and as Willem in the world of this play, what would you say that in terms of your as an actor and your process and the experience that it gave you, what do you think that A Little Life gave you, and what did it take away?
You mean like as an actor?
Yeah, as an actor, or if you'd like to go further, yeah.
Um, I mean, one very valid thing is like both these roles are American accents. So I spent essentially 8 months pretty much every day using and working with an American accent,
Hmm.
which is a really useful one to have under your belt. Um, and another thing was really just like the extreme things that happen in that show. Having done them, I do have a sense of like comfortability with that stuff. Whereas before I had done it, and when I was auditioning and looking at the offer, I was terrified, to be
Mm.
honest with you, of like doing those scenes. And there's large portions of nudity on stage, stuff like that, things that are quite frightening thoughts for an actor.
Yeah.
Having done that, it's sort of taken away a lot of fear in terms of like content and things that you may be asked to do on a stage or on a film set.
Yeah.
I feel like, once you've done it once, you can relax a little bit. Um, so I would say, in many aspects, learning both those roles and doing that show has just, it's actually taken away a lot of my anxiety as an actor. from experiencing those things like firsthand on stage.
Mm. And as you mentioned earlier, as a result of that, anything going forward now that you encounter next, you'll be like,
Yeah, that is it. It's
it's
sort
like
of like
yeah,
what can you
what
throw at
else,
me?
what can you throw at me? I've just been through this, so now
Yeah.
I'm invincible now because I've just been through this experience.
Yeah, and it will also mean that like if I do ever do something similar or in that vein, I won't have to go through that same initial process of wasting energy worrying about it. I'll feel like more ready to be like, all right, let's like work. I'm not going to sit around and waste energy on, yeah, being super anxious about having to do that stuff. It's like,
Yeah,
you kind of rip the band-aid off and you're good to go for the
yeah,
next one.
yeah, fantastic. Tom, I just want to say we've just got a couple more questions for you, mate. But first of all, let me just say a huge thank you for your time today,
Oh,
and
please. My pleasure.
also for being so open and so honest about your process and the how your emotional journey throughout this play, and the process of post drama school and all that. So I feel very very honored, and just want to say thank you for being so open with me and sharing that, because I'm sure you've helped a lot of people navigating their way out of drama school or any point in their career. So the fact you've been so open, I just want to say a big thank you for that
Oh,
first.
no, please. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, no, seriously, no, thank you for being so open. It's been really an honor to hear that. So thank you. So just a couple more questions for you, mate. If you were to shoot back to again going back to the drama school, but what would you say was a piece of advice that you wish you'd heard when you were just starting out?
To be honest, it was a piece of advice that I did hear when I was just starting out, but I didn't like fully register,
Okay.
which is one of my teachers said, it's going to take 10 years. And I remember thinking, like, what do you mean 10 years?
Yeah.
Because so often in our industry, you hear stories of like overnight success, quote unquote, right? Or your mum will say something like, look at this actor in this thing, they came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then you look at their CV and you go, Mum, they didn't. They've been doing it for 10 years. This is just the first thing you've seen. But I think overnight success and sudden fame is sort of sensationalized. And
Massively so. Massively.
rarely is the light shone on the person that's like, no, they've been doing this for a very long time and working their way up, because it's not as an exciting a story. But that is how it works, like in any profession. But because it kind of seems like overnight success is possible in acting, I think it creates this huge sense of impatience in us for it to happen now. I
Mm.
need and you look around and it's happening there and there, but not for me. And I think back all the time to the teacher saying like, it's going to take you 10 years before you like find your footing probably. And I'm sort of approaching 10 years now, I would say. And it is sort of only within the last 2 years, sort of since Shark is Broken, that I've started to feel like, I'm finding my little place in here and I'm starting to get my momentum. It's a slow moving thing until maybe all of a sudden it's not.
Mm.
I think once you kind of are at peace with that it doesn't need to happen quickly and it's a marathon, not a sprint, but that kind of, you got to be really patient.
Yeah. Massive.
And I think that goes for any industry, but we forget that with acting because you see so many stories of like stardom and rises to success. And that's very sensationalized in the press and even just talking with other actors. When actually the reality is like it's a slow grind and you just got to keep at it, really. And I wish I had listened to that advice more when he first gave it, because it's only after having almost spent 10 years at it that it's gone like, oh, yeah,
Mm.
he was right. Like, it does take a while for you to like find your feet in
Yeah.
an industry that essentially doesn't want you, you know,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
doesn't need you.
Yeah. It's a tough gig. It's a tough gig. But yeah, I have to. What you said there resonated with me a lot. You know, I will admit I'm guilty of the whole lack of patience. Like, why isn't anything happening? Why is no one responding to emails? Blah blah blah. But you know, but one thing I've learned is patience is key. You know, and you have to just keep a level head and just go. You're working towards something, and it's going to take time. But when you get to that job that you've always wanted, you'll sit back and think, okay, it was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah. And I think weirdly, you won't even realize it because it won't be a case of like a sudden big job that changes your life. It will be like 10 incrementally slightly bigger ones that only when you get to the 10th one, you look back to the first one and go like, huh, like look at the progress I've made. And it's taken years, but like it's
Yeah,
palpable.
it's a journey.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it is. I think it's a sort of slow moving machine for a while, and then suddenly it might not be. So if you just keep yourself busy with classes and making sure that you still enjoy it as well, like more than anything, you'll suddenly look back and go like, oh, look how far I've come.
Mm.
Like, yeah, we're all victims of that. Like, I definitely get impatient sometimes and upset and indignant with aspects of this industry. But then I just tell myself to like chill out. Like, I love this thing and I'm going to do it while that is still the case, which I think will probably be my whole life. So, like,
Mm.
what's the rush? Like, you know?
Enjoy it, you know, and one thing that stuck with me is it's about the journey and not the destination because, you know, you mentioned there, how do you know the destination is the destination that you want? Because you'll get to it and be like, oh, that was my destination that I wanted, but I didn't realize it. And then it's leading on to obviously further things, you know, it's not the end of the road, of course it's not. But yeah, we're just learning to have patience and just knowing that as long as you keep doing the right things, then put out good things and good things always end up coming back. So that's the important thing.
Yeah. I mean, what do they say? Like, the three things that are in your control in a job where you have very little control are you can be on time, you can be nice, and you can work hard. And I've always kind of kept that in mind, particularly the working hard thing. Like,
Mm,
you know, it's a little trickier for us, you know, musicians, you know, they're practicing every day, day in, day out. But there's a thing with acting, I think, sometimes where it's like, well, I did my drama school, I'm good to go. And it's like, nah, man, like you need to be doing this. And often you're doing it for zero payoff other than internal kind of gratification of being like, I'm continually putting in sustained energy to this thing and slowly getting better. So that when an opportunity does rise up in front of you, it hasn't come out of nowhere. You're ready for it because you work at this all the time. So I think things like taking classes or making your own work or whatever it may be to keep you occupied while you're on your way to wherever it is you're going are vital in order to not let it stagnate and sort of it's always when I have too much time on my hands and there's not been auditions, I start to get really like internal and panicking and worrying. And I know that it's at those moments where I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and like write, or I need to go find a class and take a class. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with this rant. I think essentially what I'm trying to say is like,
it's good to hear, man. It's good to hear.
be patient and put the work in and you'll be fine. I think in anything you're doing in life, like you will find your little place within this thing, whatever it is. If you work hard at it and you keep going, just inevitably you will find your place.
Yeah. Amen to that. Amen. No, brilliantly put, Tom. Really, really, that was fantastic. And just to finish on today, well, first of all, to say I'd love to have you back, Tom. I've still got so many more questions about Shark is Broken and your other things. So yeah, so I'd love to do a part two with you in the future. I'd love to have you back. And so the final question is, what's been an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to this point that you're never ever going to forget?
I mean, doing Jude is one of them, I've got to say.
Yeah, of
Like
course.
that was like a like otherworldly thing. Other than that, at drama school, one of our things we did is we devised a production of Prometheus Bound, And that was kind of extracurricular, like outside of teaching, that was just left to us as students, like, you guys take care of this. And we took it to an ancient Greek theatre in Mycenae, and we did it there for the kind of local folk. And there was just a moment where, like, we were about, and it was in the actual theatre, this sort of 2,500-year-old, or maybe even more, stones. And, you know, we're all barefoot and sort of body paint, and we're about to do this show. And I remember walking under the stone arches of the thing and just looking at the stones, and you could see how they'd been kind of eroded down by, like, the many steps of actors across, like, thousands of years. And then looking around at, like, my classmates, and we were kind of all in this zone after doing the warm up. And I just remember thinking, this is sort of phenomenal. I was like, it just felt so alive and kind of, yeah, just, I remember in that moment thinking, like, this is quite an extraordinary thing. Yeah.
One that you'll never forget.
Yeah, to be honest with you, yeah, like, I realized it in the moment. I'm like, this is one that will probably never happen again, and I'm gonna, like, keep it in the bank somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. You'll get back there.
We'll see. That'll be cool, man.
Yeah, of course you will, man. Of course you will. Tom, thank you very much. This has been a really, really lovely chat, and again, thank you for being so open and honest with me about your experiences and what you've been through. Yeah, it was really fascinating to hear, and I'm sure you're helping not only myself but everyone who's watching or listening to this. So yeah, thank you for your open honesty about it. I mean, it's very kind of you to share that with me.
Oh, thanks. No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant, man. Thank you. If you just hang on, I'll finish the recording and we'll have a little debrief afterwards to say goodbye to you there. But yeah, fantastic. We'll finish it there. But guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic podcast, and I will be back very, very soon. And for now, Tom Kelsey, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.